So it's August the 8th and August the 10th. My new book, Ranger School, is released. I hope you've made your order. If you haven't, get after it. We want this thing to come out swinging. I thought I'd just take a minute to read just a couple of passages from it to share a little bit about it. This is not some war book, okay? This is a leadership book, but also a really humorous story, the blow-by-blow of going through the world's most challenging leadership school, U.S. Army Ranger School. But I thought I'd read just a couple of pieces. Mountain phase of Ranger School is known for breakfast in the dining facility. You get breakfast in the dining facility while you're doing mountaineering before you go into the field problem where you only get one MRE a day. We'll talk about that in a minute. But blueberry pancakes are what Dahlonega is known for, the Mountain Ranger School there, Camp Frank D. Merrill. So this is, I just met with my Ranger buddy John U. Harriet, and he had KP duty, and we talked about that, and then I described breakfast in Mountain Phase. Breakfast in Mountain Phase was somewhat of a sacred experience. The blueberry pancakes were famous, of course, but that wasn't my favorite. I preferred biscuits and gravy. I pictured the cook in my mind's eye. Perhaps he was a good old boy from Suches with greased back hair, sweat running down his face and dripping from his nose as he labored over a hot stove. A man that knew his way around a kitchen because he loved to eat so much that he felt duty-bound to become a cook. It was his calling in life. Or maybe it was a fat woman with an apron and a hairnet. A woman who learned as a young girl to knead dough with her hands, who made biscuits as big as a cat's head and knew to paint a little butter on them so they'd get crispy on top. A woman who chunked her gravy with sausage and put just enough flour and milk to make it thick and creamy. The pancakes were good, but the biscuits and gravy, they were like religion, sacred. So that's the dining facility at Dahlonega, just a short piece there. But I wanted to read you a piece later on into the field problem now, where we have been cold and wet, 1 MRE a day for the entire time we'd been there, and the RIs are coming in for a foot check to make sure we don't have frostbite. I assume they knew that most of us were asleep, so they made a loud entry into our presence to abruptly wake us. I sat up and began unlacing my boots. The leather was soggy and cold. Since all of my clothes had been drenched in the gully, I had no dry socks left. My feet were wet and pruned. My toes and the bottoms of my feet were pink and wrinkly. I could no longer feel either of my big toes. They were completely numb and had been for a couple of days. After peeling my socks off, I wrung them out. Black water ran through my fingers as I twisted them. I already dreaded knowing that I'd have to put wet socks back on my feet. Taking them off wasn't so bad, but putting wet socks and boots back on was torture. What I'd give for dry socks. The ranger sitting beside me carefully took his wet boots off, then he removed his rocky Gore-Tex booties, and I could not believe what I saw. Underneath the booties, his socks were completely dry. Staring at his dry feet, I envied him. No, I coveted his Gore-Tex booties, and I wanted them as badly as I've ever wanted anything in my life. I knew that they were allowed in Ranger School, but they were expensive. I'd never owned a pair, so I figured I didn't need them to make it through. Underestimating the conditions, I chose not to buy a pair. Now, upon seeing his dry feet, I'd have paid any price for a pair. Suddenly, I had an idea. I looked around and saw that the RI was well down the line, lecturing a student on the use of foot powder. So I spun around and dug through my rucksack. I quickly took inventory of my chow. I had some cheese and crackers in my trouser pocket and 2 MREs in my rucksack. It was all I had left. It was my last 2 days' rations, but I figured we only had a couple of days left in the field anyway. Silently, I crafted my plan, and then it was time to go for it. "You want to trade those Gore-Tex booties?" I asked. "Yeah, right," he said, rolling his eyes. "No, seriously, hear me out," I said. "For what? What could you trade for these?" he replied, holding the booties up. It took me a minute to form the words in my mouth. He looked at me like he knew there was nothing that I could offer worth trading. Maybe I had a tin of snuff left that I'd offer. Then I caught him completely by surprise. I have 2 MREs left. I'll trade both for those booties, I said. The shock on his face could not be disguised. 2 MREs, he said? You'd trade your food? It was a desperate move. He knew it and I knew it. Since there was no way to buy and sell restful sleep, nothing was more valuable than food. Still, my wet dogs bothered me more than the wolf in my belly. You could eat until you're full now and still have chow for the next couple of days, I said as convincingly as I could. He thought long and hard. Then he picked the booties up and held them in his hands. He stared at me like Frodo in the He stared at them like Frodo in the ring. I can't, man. It's gonna rain more, and I don't want wet feet. I can't do it. Are you sure? Think about it. 2 MREs, I said again. You're crazy for offering your chow, dude, he said. You won't make it without chow. Besides, I want to keep my feet dry. No, I can't do it. And that was it. Ranger School, August 10th. Get your copy ordered now.